Hi, I am Pedram, and together we will be creating a real-time chat app. Our goal is to create a simple messenger app where users can log in, chat with their friends, update their profiles, share files, etc. Regarding the tools that we will be using for the front end, we are going to use Android SDK, Kotlin, and Jetpack Compose. And for the backend, we will be using Firebase. As you can see, we have two modules, the start module and the finish module. You will write your code in the start module and you will compare your code with the code in the finish module to see if you have written your code successfully. The tasks for each lesson are written as to-do items. You can easily check them out by tapping on the to-do item here, and you can see what you need to do for each lesson. And after you're done with your coding, you can compare your code with the same file in the finish module, where you can see that we have written the code. The first task would be to let our users log in to our app. As you can see, the users are going to have two options: sign in or sign up. Please pause the video and do the to-do items. After that, we will go through the solution together. So let's go through the task one by one. So first, we would initialize our auth object. For the second task, we would sign the user out, pretty straightforward. And for the third task, we would get the current user. The users are going to have two options to authenticate: sign up or sign in. So to sign up a user, we are going to need an email and a password. The activity, because we will want to get a response back, and we are going to have a callback called onComplete, and we will use this callback to notify our caller that the task has been done. Now the authentication is going to either be successful or it would fail. If it's successful, we would show a successful message to the user, and we would let the callback know that the authentication was successful. And if it fails, then we would show a fail message to the user, and we would let the callback know that it has failed. It's pretty much the same for signing function, but you need to pay attention to this part. Auth.signin with email and password for sign-in, and for sign up we are going to use a different method. It's called auth.createUser with email and password. And this is really important because you have to sign up with a new email, but you have to sign in with an email that has already been created. Okay, so let's test our code together. Let's try the signing option first. As you can see, the authentication failed because we have not created an account yet. So let's try sign up. Yep, we were successful creating our account. So let's sign out and try signing again, because now we have created our account and we are in. In this lesson, we are going to let our users to be able to create and update their own profiles. So let's sign up. Alright, as you can see, the user has this profile screen. So let's change their name. Let's say it would be John Doe, and let's use a profile image. Okay, and let's press save. Alright, as you can see, the profile has been updated successfully. Okay, now let's sign out and check if everything is working correctly. Okay, let's sign in. And our profile has been saved successfully. So let's implement this together. Okay, so let's check our tasks and go through them one by one. Alright, so the first class would be this Firebase util, and this is a helper class because we are going to use multiple objects together. Alright, so the first task would be to update profile, and you have to write the code here, right? What you need to do is to upload the image if it's available, and then save that data into the database. Next, we would write sign up. So when the user creates their accounts, we have to update their profile in a way it's creating their profile in the database, and also get current user data. And here we would listen for the database for the users and get this current user data in case we are going to show them their profile, or they are going to write messages, read messages, all those sort of stuff. Okay, our next class would be database util, and basically this is the class that we are going to use to write and read messages and users from our Firebase database. As you can see, we have a user DB variable that's referencing the users table in our database, and what you need to do is to first initialize the database, then update the user profile, and then get the current user here. And last but not least, we have a storage util, which is going to be used to upload our files to Firebase storage, and you need to initialize the storage reference and then just upload the profile image. So you can pause the video now and finish the task, and we will go through them together. Okay, so first let's check Firebase util class, and here basically we are not doing anything, right? We are just trying to communicate between different classes like storage util and database util and auth util. Okay, so for update profile, we first check for the user. If the user is not available, then we are not going to update anything, because for some reason the user has been disconnected and is signed out, so we just return. And if the user is there, we are just going to save the profile image, and then create and update the user profile in our database with that image and the provided name with the user ID that's the authenticated user ID. As for the sign up, it's pretty simple. We are just going to first authenticate the user, and if the authentication is successful, we are going to call the update profile and just create the user in our database tables. In sign-in, we are not going to do anything, right? Because the user is not new, so we are not creating a profile for them. We are just going to authenticate them. And in get current user data, we are going to reference our database util class and ask the class to return our current user data for the currently authenticated user, which is our auth util user. So let's check our database util class together. As you can see, first we will initialize our database with our database path, which you can find in your Firebase console. And then in the update user profile, it's really simple. We have our user table, and we would add a row with our user ID because it's unique for each user, right? And we would set the value, and that's about it. That would either create a row if it's not there, or update the current row with this user data. And we just listen for its completion, and if it was successful, we would say okay, just return successful, and if it's not, we would say it was not successful. And it's always a good idea to put logs here, because when you're debugging, you never know what would happen. So by checking logs, it would be real easier for you to debug your code and find errors, mistakes, if there's any. Okay, so our last to-do item was to get our client user data, and again, it's really simple, right? We would just check our user table, and we would check for our user ID row, and then we would listen for that row, right? So any changes that happens, if the user updates their profile or something else that would happen, this would be notified, and here we would just return that data. So that would be our updated user data. And as for the last class, which is a storage util, again we are going to initialize our storage object, and we get a reference to it. And in the save profile image, we are going to do a couple of things, right? So first and foremost, if no image was provided, so for example, when the user is creating their accounts, they have not set any profile image, we would just return no image, right? We don't need to upload anything actually, because we don't have anything to upload. And after that, what we need to do is to again get a reference to our storage and go through this profile path, which we would save our profile images there, and then we would create a new file, and that file would be the file path would be our user ID, because we are going to have a profile image for each unique user. And then we would just upload the file and listen for its completion. If it was successful, we would get its download link, and if it's not, then we would just return no URL. And back to Firebase util, we can see that everything is coming together here, and it's important for us that at this time we are not actually having a problem if the file was not uploaded, right? Because we don't actually care that much whether the user has their profile image or not. We are just really caring about if the user has been recorded in our database under our user table, because in the future when we are going to get our user list, the profile image doesn't actually matter, but we need to know that we have this user. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to create group chats. So let's walk through the app together. As you can see, I'm Snowy. Okay, this would be our home page. Let's create a group. First, let's create a one-on-one group. So let's create a group with user 3. Alright. As you can see, now we have a group with user 3. And now let's create another group, and this time we are going to include John Doe, user 2, and Cute Rabbit. So let's create this group, and as you can see, now we have a group and not a single person. So let's go back, and as you can see, we have two groups now. Okay, let's check other users to see if the chats are available to them. Let's try user 3 first, and as you can see, yes, we have one chat with Snowy. Now let's try again another one, and we are logging as user 1, and as you can see, yes, we have a group by Snowy. Okay, now let's walk through the task to see what we need to do. So first, let's check the database util class. Okay, so the first thing is we need to get all the users so we can create chats with, and next we need to create a chat room, and this part is kind of complex, so you need to do 3 things together. So first, create a chat object, then add that chat reference to all the recipients, and then return the created chat. And lastly, we need to get all the chats that the user is currently a part of, and this would be for our database util class. As for our Firebase util class, we are just going to use our database util class. So first we need to get all the users, but we will not show the current user, right? Because we don't want to actually chat with ourselves. And then we need to create a chat. And as you can see, this recipient only contains the user that the current user has been selected. So we are going to create the chat room for them and also our current user. So keep that in mind. And yeah, that would be it. Okay, I'll give you some time. You can pause the video and we can walk through the code as the solution together. Okay, so let's go through the solution. First, we will get all the users, and it's pretty simple, right? We have our user table and we get all the rows there. And yeah, we return a list of all available users. If we fail on something and we don't have any users, we just return an empty list. So it's pretty simple here. The tricky part is create chat room function. So as I've mentioned, we need to do a couple of things together. So first thing is we need to have a reference to our chat table. So as you can see, it's not the user table anymore. We are going to work with our chat table, and we are going to push and get the key. So this push function here would actually create a new row in our table and return its ID, which is the key. And if no ID was returned for some reason, our Firebase didn't work, so we just abort the operation. If it didn't, we are going to, as you can see, we are going to have a chat, current user chat, and we keep track of the chat, which would be saved for our current user, because we are going to actually use its title and image to show in our chat screen. And we have a list of member IDs, which is all the recipients, but their IDs only. And yeah, we are going to include their IDs in our chat. And this is the difficult part. We need to do all these operations together. So if one of them fails, we are not going to do any of them at all. So if, for example, let's say that we have 5 recipients, right? And one of them, for some reason, Firebase cannot actually create the room for them. We are not going to create the room for any of the members. So we are going to do all these operations together. And for that, Firebase has this useful function which is called update children. And what this function does, it would have this parameter that's a hash map, so a map, and it would do all these operations together. However, for this hash map to work, we are going to need 2 parameters. The first one would be the path to the node that we want to update, and the second one would be the data that we are going to write. So first thing first, we are going to write our chat map, which was the chat that we previously created and have included the member IDs in it, and we would put it in the chat path. So if we can check it here, we can see that the path for our update children is a little different. It has these slashes, so you need to remember to put them in, because if you don't, they would not work. So let's go back here. Okay, so first we would update and add the member list to our chat. Next, for all the recipients, we are going to add this chat reference to their list, because later on, where you can see each user has their own chat. So not every chat is for every user. So each user has a certain amount of chats that they are part of, and here we are going to, as you can see, we are going to create a chat with the ID that we initially created, and we are going to put it in our current user chat path. So if we can check it here, the difference is, as you can see, the general chat path is under chats and then the ID, but for the users we are going to put it under the users, under the user ID, so it would be unique for each user and it would be a chat there. Okay, and then we would update children, so all the operations should be successful, or it would fail. And if the task was successful, we are just going to return our user chat, and if it's not, then we haven't done actually anything. And as you can see, we have two utility functions, get chat name and get chat image, to provide the chat name and image, but this is not mandatory, so you can have it or you can skip it whatsoever. But to put it in simple terms, these are used to create our chat name and chat image, because we are going to show the, whenever that we are going to show the chats in the chat list, we kind of need these two at this time. So this is the reason that we have these two utility functions. And get user chats, it's pretty simple, right? As we could see previously, we did write our chats which the user was part of under the user table, and here we are just going to access the chat table under user table, and then we are going to return all the chats. And for our Firebase utility class, it's actually pretty simple. So for to get all the users, we are going to return all the users except the one that we are currently using. So it would be our current user, the authenticated user. So we are going to filter all the items except the one which has the current user. As for the create chat, as we talked about it, we are going to include all the recipients and also the current user, because the current user is going to also be a part of these chats that are being created. And for getting the user chats, pretty simple. We are just going to call this database util function and it should work. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to write a message. So let's try it. Say hello. Okay, we have our message here, and on this one, let's attach a file. Yep, our file has been sent. Okay, so let's see what we need to do. To send a message, we need to do three things. The first thing is we should be allowed to upload a file, so we need to do something with storage. The second thing would be to write our messages, and the third thing would be to retrieve those messages. So let's go through the tasks that we need to do. Okay, let's start by the storage util class. We need to do two things. So the first thing is to save our file, so whatever the file would be, whatever the user attaches to their message, we need to save it in our storage. And then we have to download the file, and to download this file we have many options, but we are going to use the Android built-in download manager because it's really easy to use and it has very cool features. Okay, let's go to our database util class. So the first thing is we need to send a message, and we are going to, each message is going to be for a specific chat, right? So if we are going to send a PvP message or a chat message, that chat room has an ID that we need to use. So we are going to create a message under that chat object. So in our chat table and under this chat object. And we need to also get messages. So we send the messages and we need to get those messages to be shown to the user. And for this thing we need to do two things. So we need to create a listener for our messages. So this would be the children of our chat item. So under our chat room, we have this chat object with this chat ID, and we are going to listen to the messages of that chat object, and then we need to add this child listener to our chat object message. And yeah, we can see later on how we need to do this thing. And lastly, we are going to wire all these things together. So to send a message, we need to first get our current user data and append it to our message. So we need to know who has sent that message. Next thing is we need to upload the attachments if there's any. So if the user has wants to upload some file, we are going to upload that file to our storage, and then we are going to save our message in the database. And to get the messages, it's really easy. We are just going to call our database get message function, and we would be good to go. Okay, look, you can pause the video now, and after that we are going to look at the solution together. Okay, so let's go through the steps one by one. First, we are going to check our storage functions. So firstly, we need to save the file. It would be exactly the same as how we saved our profile pictures, with a minor difference that we are going to upload them under a different path, the attachment path, and we are going to also put them in another folder, which would be for our chat. So this path here would be our chat ID, and then we just put the file there and return the download link. So it's exactly like what we did with the profile pictures. As for downloading the file, we are going to use the download manager, the Android service. So to download a file, first we need to know what file we are working with. So we need to get its metadata. It's actually really useful for Firebase to put it there. So when we get the metadata, we can see what our content type is, and then we have to pass it here in our download request. As for the file name, the URL that we are passing here would be the absolute path to our file, right? So it has all these HTTPS and all those bucket address, this sort of stuff, and we don't need any of them. We just want to know the file name, and we can get it like this. And that would be it. We need to now start our download manager. We need to create a request for that URL, and we need to set the type, the content type, which we get it here. Here we can set the notification visibility, whether we want to show a notification to the user that the download is being started, and if it has been downloaded successfully, and we want to show the notification here. So if the user has downloaded a file, we can show it to the user, and we set the title of that notification to our file name, and this is where we say where to download that file. So we are going to download it under our downloads folder, but you can easily change it. And here we just include that request, so we let the download manager know that we want to download this file, and the download manager would automatically do all these things together. So it would start the downloading, and it would also notify the user when the download has been done. So let's check our database solution. To send a message, first we need to get a reference to our chat table and a reference to our chat object, and then get a reference to its message object, and then push a new item there, and then we can just easily set the value to our data class here. So it's really simple. Next, and this part would be a little complicated, we need to get our messages. So to do this, we need to have a child event listener. So it would be a little different from value event listener. And as you can see, our structure here has 4 functions. So onChild added, onChild changed, onChild removed, onChild moved, and onCancelled. So for this simple messenger app, we need to do work with only 2 of these functions, onChild added and onChild changed. OnChild added is very simple, right? When a user creates a new message, or when we first start listening to our objects. So if we start the app and then the user just visits the messages, the chat room screen, the first time the initial response with this object would be onChild added for all the items. After that, if anything changes, the onChild change would be called, and we can just do whatever we want with this item, right? So for example, currently we just replaced the item that we currently had and we update it with our new data. And lastly, we need to bind this listener to our message path under our chat table and for our chat object. And lastly, let's check our Firebase util class. To send a message, first we need to append the user data. So our current user, our current Firebase user, we would set the message sender ID to our current user ID and the sender message image to our current user image. And then we would check whether an attachment is available or not. If it was available, then we need to upload that file. If it's not, then we would just send a message. So nothing too complicated here. And as for getting the messages, we are just going to call our database util get chat messages function, and we would pass our data. And so download attachment is pretty much the same. And here we have this file get file name that we are using to create a file name from our URI, because if you know Android, from the URI we cannot actually tell what the content type is, and it would also change the file name. So we are using this utility function here, but it's not mandatory for you to use. You can use whatever naming convention that you want, but just make sure that you know what the content type is, because you are going to use it in our storage util, our download file task here, because our download manager actually needs to know what type we are dealing with. In this lesson, we are going to implement the presence system in our app. So we have 2 presences that we need to implement. The first is the chat presence. So when a message has been delivered, we need to change the status. As you can see here, we have 2 check marks that says that it has been delivered. And the next presence is user presence, which you can see that our user is currently online. So let's test this feature together. Let's write a message. Okay. So as you can see, the message has been delivered. Okay, let's go back. Let's write something else. So here the message has been sent, but it hasn't been delivered yet because the user has not seen it yet. So let's go back to our chat. And yes, it has been delivered. And as for the user presence, you can see that the user is currently online. So let's quit the app. And yes, the user is now currently offline. So let's walk through the task to see what we need to do together. Okay, so let's walk through the task to see what we need to do. The first thing is we need to update our message seen status. So we need to notify the server that a message has been seen. And yeah, it's really simple. Just get a reference to this message object and update it with new data. The next task would be to remove the chat listener, and we are using this since we are going to update messages when we are listening to chats, right? So when the user gets out of a chat, we have to remove the chat listener so we don't accidentally just call this update message seen status when the user is not currently active in that chat room, because a user can be online but can be in other chats, chatting with other users, and we don't want all the users to be notified of their messages to be seen while the user has not seen their messages. And the next two tasks would be for user presence. So the first one is to just set the user presence, so when the user goes online or where the user goes offline. And the next one is to get the user presence, so when the user visits a chat screen of a user, so a PV of a user, we have to get the user presence and listen to it to see when they would be online or go back offline. As for our Firebase util class, first thing is we need to set the user presence when the user starts to use the app. So when we get the current user data, so when we get their profile, their image, their name, we have to just update their database and let the presence to be known. So if another user would just query their data, they would see that this user is online. And next thing is when we want to just pause the app, so when the user gets out of the app and quits the app, we have to update the presence again to let the server know that they are offline. So this would be for the user presence. And we have the message delivery presence. So when we get a message, we have to update its status, seen status, if the message has not been sent by the current user. So if it has been sent by another user. And again, we have this remove chat listener here. It's basically calling the remove chat listener from our database. So we let the server know that the user is not currently in this chat room. And here we would just get the user presence. So it's really simple. We have a list of users, and we need to check which user we need to listen for his presence, and it would be the other user and not the current user, right? So if a chat room usually has 2 or more participants, so if it has 2 participants, we would just listen to the other user present and we would show it in the toolbar. Okay, so you can pause the video now and we will walk through the solution together. Okay, let's walk through the solution together. So first thing first, we want to update the message, and it's really simple. We have this message object that has its seen status updated, so we just get a reference to our object, which would be under our chat table, under the messages, and it would be the message which has the same ID as our message, and we just set its value. Really simple. So the next function would be to remove chat listener. Here what we do is, if we have any listeners active, so if they're not null, we can just remove them. So it's really simple. Again, for messages it's under chats, so our chat table, and we would remove it, and for our presence it's under our user table. Setting the user presence, again, it's really simple. The only difference between setting a message seen status and a user presence is that for user we just get a reference to our user table and not the chat table. So again, it's pretty much the same. We get a reference to our user table. We get our user object for this user ID, and when we get the presence object under this user ID, and we just set its value. As for getting the user presence, again, we know where the presence object of a user lives, so we just get to that address, get that reference, and then listen to any changes on that object. Next, let's check Firebase util class. So the first thing we needed to do was to update our user presence when the user enters the app and then exit the app. So when the user enters the app, we are calling this get current user data function, and when we get our data back, we are going to update its presence only if the user is not already online. And we do this because anytime that you update this object, this function would be, this callback would be called again. So we don't want to have this infinite loop that it's going to again update itself all over again. So we are going to set the presence to online only if the user is not already online. And when the user exits the app, we are going to do this same thing, with only difference that instead of putting this online word for our presence, we are going to set the last date that the user is going to was online. Okay, and yes, so removing chat listener is really simple. We are just going to call our database util chat listener with the parameters that it needs to know. Getting user presence, first we need to know whom we are going to listen to, and we can do it with this utility function get other user ID, and we pass it our list of participants, and we can get the ID of whoever that we need to listen to, and then we then call our database util get user presence function. So again, it's really simple, it's nothing that difficult to do. And yes, that would be it if you have done everything correctly, and if you are testing, you should see everything work just fine. Congratulations everyone. In this course we learned how to create a simple messenger for Android. The user could authenticate, can have send messages to a user or a group chat. It has presence system, the user can upload files, the users can send text messages, and the message has also a delivery system, so they can know whether their participant has seen the message or not. And for this project we used Firebase as our backend, and we used Compose for our UI. If you've been following along correctly, your start module should look pretty much the same like the finish module, and if that does, then everything should work fine.